So I was planning my campaign, one of my sessions a couple of weeks ago, and one of my characters I knew was going to open this barrel full of a swarm of rats. And I began to think, is he going to be surprised? And if he is, what happens? And so then it sort of occurred to me, surprise. How does that work in Dungeons and Dragons? Let's talk about that. I think it's super interesting that here in the player's handbook, under the chapter for combat, one of the very first topics is surprise. Let's read it. A band of adventurers sneaks up on a bandit camp, springing from the trees to attack them. A gelatinous cube glides down a dungeon passage, unnoticed by the adventurers until the cube engulfs one of them. In these situations, one side of the battle gains surprise over the other. What does that mean? Yeah, there's a couple of things going on there I think we need to kind of dig into. In the example, I think it's kind of interesting that they have two scenarios that play out in very different ways. One is a sneak attack, which might suggest that, hey, if you're kind of on your toes, someone jumps out at you, you might be able to react. Another is just walking along and then bloop, out of nowhere, bam. So are those two different ways to handle surprise? The section goes on to say, the dungeon master determines who might be surprised. I think that's the crux of it. The dungeon master has to be a little bit realistic or apply some sense of kind of the physics of our world, some fairness to it. If you're walking down a cavern and a gelatinous cube comes behind the last person in the marching order and snatches them up, does that person have an attack after you roll initiative? Yeah, different shirt, different day. Just picking back up where we left off. And no wine yet. Happy Labor Day, by the way. So the question was, in the gelatinous cube example, the last person in the marching order is the one who's attacked, and everyone rolls initiative. Now, what does that person who's attacked get to do? And what does the gelatinous cube get to do? And what do all the other player characters get to do? And this is where I think surprise gets a little bit interesting, at least to me, where the dungeon master has to sort of intervene and use some judgment. The player's handbook goes on to say that any character or monster that doesn't notice a threat is surprised at the start of the encounter, and if you are surprised, you can't move or take an action on your first turn of the combat. And that sounds completely reasonable. You're surprised. But here's where it gets a little bit weird, right? What if you've got 5 people in your party, everyone rolls initiative, and including the dungeon master, and let's just stick with this gelatinous cube example. And let's say the initiative order is player character, player character, player character, player character, player character who was attacked by the gelatinous cube, and then at the very end is the gelatinous cube. And you start initiative. Well, what if PCs 1, 2, 3, and 4 destroy the cube before you get to take your turn, which is, according to this, you don't get to do anything, right, because you're surprised, but really before the gelatinous cube gets to take its turn. And you can't tell me that that thing didn't do damage to you, right? I mean, it attacked you, and then sure, everybody else got to, lay into it. And so that's where I kind of take a little bit of a step back and go, he hit you. There's got to be some damage there. That's rare. This is a rare scenario probably, but just something to keep in mind. In 99% of combat encounters, surprise works just the way it is written here. If the person is surprised in the combat according to the dungeon master, then when it is that person's turn in the initiative order, they just don't get to do anything. And then it'll go back around again. Of course, by then you're not surprised, and then combat just takes right back over again. So that's surprise, a little bit of that gray area in there. I hope that made sense. Let me know in the comments if you have additional insights from your gaming table or your experiences playing the game, or any questions that you'd like to follow up with me on, and look forward to hearing from you guys. Oh, by the way, I'm excited to kind of start adding these videos back into some of the how to play playlists, so good to be back. Talk to you soon.